1991. When I first got arrested and called a charge. Felony at the age of 17. You know what's crazy? Growing up in Chicago, as violent and dangerous, territorial, gang-banging headquarters as it was, it's crazy I can say this and honestly mean it. We didn't look at it as having it hard. It was conditioned. Like we were conditioned to the environment because we were born in it. So it was natural to us. At least to those who didn't come from that wouldn't think it like that. But for us who come from that life, we didn't look at it as being hard because it was natural. We were born into them situations. It's sort of like a slave that was born into slavery don't really look at it as being hard because you trained from the womb. You train from the womb of how things go. So as you get older, you adapt to the situation and you learn how to even make those conditions better for you, as hard as it may be for others. But for the slaves who became slaves that once knew what freedom was like, changing from being a free person to a slave, yes, that's very hard on them. And changing that conditioning, yeah, it's entirely different when you were born a slave. And I'm using that as an example to show how things was for us, born and raised and growing up in Chicago. In those ghettos, and I'm talking about these are real ghettos, nothing like what a lot of people calling it ghettos now. It was very segregated. We didn't have whites or Hispanics in our ghettos. Not one family. They were all black, period. No ifs and buts about it. And those conditions were natural to us. We didn't look at it as being hard. We didn't even look at it as surviving or as a thing of survival. It was just everyday living. Because that's how it was from the very beginning. Gang banging was like a happening trend. It was fashionable. Even all the stores was actually making gang banging attire for profit. The big stores, Nike and Reeboks, even the NFL, NBA, baseball, they were literally making gang banging attire for those sports teams, knowing that we would be the ones to not only make it marketable, we were going to be the one to buy it all, that they would profit off of. So they were making gangbanging clothes on purpose for us to be involved in off our blood. Off our blood. They purposely was doing that. Like I can give you some examples. Like the Gangster Disciples wore things like Duke Blue Devil outfits. We would wear those. They would be mainly in black and blue, which was our colors. They would have the devil with the pitchforks. They would have the horns. They would have, and all this stuff was written in like our literature type stuff. And they were making the clothes, the fashion to the literature that we had under those creeds in the gangs we were in. I'm telling you real stuff. The vice lords would be wearing things like UNLVs, you know, Dallas Cowboys attire, you know what I'm saying? Because they had the 5-point stars on them. And they was literally making these clothes on purpose with our colors and everything. We wasn't choosing colors and things based upon them. They were making it based upon us. Yeah, literally. And the more knowledgeable they got and familiar with the gangs, they would make the fashion even that much higher. So people were getting killed for what they were wearing, knowing that it was gang banging attire. They even got so graphic with it, they started making, I'm talking about real national teams. You know what I'm saying? Like NFL, like I said, NBA, baseball, literally making clothes even with disrespectful gang attire on it, without having to say the name. Like, they'll take like the 5-point star, break it in half. So you had gangsters literally buying that in disrespect to vice lords because it broke the 5 in half. They used to do stuff like that. They used to start making clothes with pitchforks going down. They were doing all that type of stuff, contributing to the gang violence that was going on while not being on the battlegrounds and playing fields, standing on the sideline, profiting off of the death and blood and incarcerations of us. That's what was going on. And gang banging was trending. It was the happening thing to do, to be, especially when you were coming from broken families and things wasn't going so well in the home. That really, really made them grow big. When you got so many young, wild, angry, mad, thirsty, hungry, ambitious young guys all coming together under one umbrella to be a part of something that we call love, because we don't come from places of love. So in 1992, 1991, when I first called my case, these things, man, led me into wanting to do whatever to just move up in ranks. And I didn't care. I took orders without asking questions. And I showed myself to be faithful in anything that was asked of me. In anything that was asked of me. Hold on, I'm getting somewhere with this. Yeah, of anything that was asked of me. Hold on a second. Let me show y'all something. I'm trying to open this up for y'all, because I want to get somewhere with this. Let me show y'all something. You know how like the prison shut down, you know, it ain't free rent. So ain't nobody impacted. Right. But I just want to stop here for a second. I want to show y'all something. And this was our leader. This was our leader back in those days. We were up under him. He was the leader, and he was also my big brother, my blood big brother. I can talk about this stuff now because he actually ended up getting indicted as a result of this. I ended up going to prison as a result of this too. So these are things that's out here already, transcripted and everything on this, so we can talk about it. So this is who I was up under. I did everything that was asked of me, and no question. Now at this time, I was 17 years old. At this time, when I really was going heavy for the gang or the mob. And he would send me on missions. You, go do that. Go do that. Go with them. Go do that. Go do that. And I did it faithfully, just like I was told. And I was in his shadow because everybody knew that that was my brother. So I wanted to build a name and reputation off of him, his status. Because they figured if my brother had already been acknowledged through all the prisons, in the streets, everybody knew who he was. I didn't have a name. And that's what a lot of us wanted. We wanted a name. But in order to get a name, you have to be involved in doing stains. We call them stains. Getting your hands dirty. Getting dirty. So in getting these stains and hitting these licks, we began to develop a name for ourselves. And there were so many of us in line, just waiting to be called upon so that we can prove ourselves. With no guidance, no understanding of life, no consciousness of what we do to others. We just all on every side wanting to prove ourselves, to find ourselves worthy. He began to train me for position. By me being his blood brother, he figured that if he was going to have trust in anybody, it'd be me. Because he knew whatever he told me, I was going to do it. And he knew that if anything happened along the way, because he's my blood brother, I go down with the ship or whatever it was. And in the process of that, you know, he also was trying to protect me from things like that may have happened to me. But at the same time, he wasn't going to hold my hand, knowing that eventually I would have to stand on my own when being in these streets. So he didn't begin because he was been doing it. So he used to train us because he knew karate and everything. He was a boxer and he knew karate. He was a hell of a fighter. He'll beat you with pistols or he'll beat you with his fists. It didn't even matter. Whatever you wanted, pick your poison. That's how he was. Pick your poison and how you want this to happen. You want to take it to the street with guns? or you want to fight. We could brawl it out. Pick your poison. Either one is fine with me. And he trained us to be just like that. We would have to fight for hours against one another. He would pair us up and put us in teams because he didn't want nobody under him not knowing how to defend themselves or being scared for battle if it ever was called upon that we would have to. So he was trying to build and raise our confidence, even though he doing it with the lack of understanding and guidance that he was given, seeing that he was on his own ever since he was young too. And we loved him from what we thought love was, and we respected him, and every last one of us would have put our life on the line for him. At anything he said, we were ready to kill for him. We were willing to go to prison for him. Anything, this is the power of being a leader like him. Anything he asked of us, we were going to give. We were going to give. He was our king. He was our chief. He was our God. That's what he was. Because he knew anything he say out of his mouth, we would kill for him or go to prison for him. He knew that. And for him to even have power like that, under control, knowing that you can make these brothers and sisters do anything you want them to do, that says a lot. Even though, again, he didn't know neither. In telling these stories, I'm not condoning anything. I'm not justifying anything. I've spent 10.5 years of my life in prison. And I'm going to break this stuff down to y'all and give it to you from the very beginning all the way to the end and who I am today as a result of it. So we're going to be doing a lot of episodes on this. And this is episode 1. It's just the introduction to the things about to take place. So I caught 3 cases back to back, all felonies. But the case that got me the most was this very case on him. Because I didn't know they were working on an indictment on him at the time I had got arrested. So they were working on a federal indictment on taking him down. I didn't know this at the time. Remember, I'm just 17. So I ended up catching the case, and I was set up, and I was ratted out. When the police found out that that was my brother, they began to try to work on me, to break me down. They brought me into interrogation rooms to try to get me to tell on him. And when I wouldn't tell, they began to put more cases on me, hoping it'd break me down. And those were the cases that actually took me down when I caught my first case. And I was found guilty in trial. And then I escaped. Like, I didn't escape, but I was fighting the case. And then when I was found guilty, I fled. I went on a run. It was bringing a lot of heat on the mob. Police was looking for me. So they were sweating the neighborhood a lot. And I was taught into turning myself in. So I turned myself in, and they sentenced me to 7 years in prison. At that time, it was half and half, so I only had to do 3.5. But this would be my first time on the way to prison. And while I'm in the county, I had a friend of mine that I ended up meeting in there. He was an opposition. His name was Rico. He was a black dude. He wasn't Hispanic though. He was black. They just called him Rico. And me and him was real cool with each other. Some people didn't like it because we were oppositions. I was a disciple. He was a vice lord. But we were like two of the youngest dudes in there, so we clicked automatically. And usually in prison or in the counties, you're not going to really have problems with the oppositions. Your problems will be with your own kind. You don't really have to worry about oppositions because how Illinois is constructed when it comes to gangs. Every gang had rules and policies that their members had to abide by to keep order. To keep order. It was ran sort of like the mob. You couldn't just shoot and kill people. You had to get permission to do that. The crazy thing about it is it was an open policy. What I mean by open policy, you know how how things is now, that if you're trying to kill somebody, do that, you don't really let that be known like that because you understand the consequences that happen behind getting caught. Well, back in those days, you had to get permission to kill. You had to get permission to do that because your action could trigger off a gang war. So it was an open policy that you had to let be known before the board. So you had to let people know of your dealings and affairs and what was going on to get permission to do these things. Ain't that something? And they'll give you the yay or the nay. And mostly every organization was structured this way to keep order. And it was very territorial. And for the most part, every gang respected their boundaries. That's why sometimes you will have these problems when people disrespect the boundaries or the treaties. Like, man, what you doing over here? Y'all, that was a form of disrespect. It seemed as though people were trying to move in on a territory and things like that. So it was very territorial. So me and Rico got real close while we was in the county, waiting to get transported to the prisons. That was a person who used to harass Rico all the time that was a member of his gang. It used to make me mad because he was trying to bully Rico all the time. And Rico was more humble. And one day, the guy was bothering Rico while me and Rico was together, just kicking it. And, and I felt offended because it's like he was trying to, like, like you with somebody, like you and your guy kicking it and somebody like trying to disrespect him, but you there too. So it's sort of like he disrespecting you too because he know you there too. It was like that. And then me and him ended up having a few words, which got the attention of other people that was nearby. So while we was eating chow, I grabbed my tray and I popped him across the face with like, pow! He flew over off the chair. And then me and Rico committed to giving him one of them real old dog and cane menace to society stumpings. So we thumping him, putting all type of knots and hickeys on his head and everything. Police and stuff all come in and everything. They lock us up, take us down to the hole. So we spent 20 days in the hole, and we ended up getting transported to prison. It was a long ride, and I was just saying to myself, like, wow, remembering all these prison movies I used to watch, I'm like, man, now I'm finna have to fight for my life for the next 3.5 years. When we get to the prison, the walls and gates and barbed wire everywhere, and all the gangs around the yard, I'm like, wow, we here. I'm like one of the youngest dudes ever in there. And this will be when I really begin to start making a name for myself even more.